Hi, I'm Dr. Jan Thatcher Adams. I just want to preface what I'm reading by saying that I was 17 years old when I met a football player named Carl Koselke. We got married right after my freshman year. For the next 9 years, he played with the Minnesota Vikings, and I finished undergraduate and finished medical school and also had 2 children. And what I'm going to read is, just the last kind of gasp of our marriage on the last page, which, as you might imagine, was full of joy and tragedy and fun and difficulty. So in one quick week, the long, sad dissolution of a marriage hits bottom, and it's decided. When Carl arrives home from Montana one night in January 1973, his suitcases are packed and sitting in the living room. I'm going to tell him to leave and we'll get a divorce. I'm sitting up in bed when he comes into the bedroom. It's 1 o'clock. He stands in the corner. What's going on, Janny? Carl, I want a divorce. Your bags are packed for you. Please go. He looks at his feet for a moment, then asks, well, can we have sex one more time? No, Carl, we can't have sex ever again. Again, he quietly studies his feet, and then he looks at me. I've only been unfaithful with 5 women. I don't believe you, but it doesn't matter anymore. Again, a silence, and then he says, you were right about last summer. I picked up a woman, a teacher, on the plane from Iowa after the football camp. Instead of getting off the plane in Minneapolis, I went on to Chicago with her. We did stay in that motel. And you know what she said to me? She said my wife must be the luckiest woman in the world. Carl, listen to you. You're trying to tell me that when you were having an affair, your mistress said I am lucky, and you don't get the irony of that? Well, I guess I didn't think of it that way. With that, he sighs, leaves the room, and walks out of my life. I think not with a bang, but a whimper. Of course, once married, never truly divorced, for he will loom largely in my life until the day he dies, and then some.
Wonderful. That was Jan Adams, and she was reading from Football Wife, Coming of Age with the NFL, and as Mrs. Carl Koselke, and she's actually Jan Thatcher Adams, MD, on the face of this very nice book, which has got a Vikings colour to it, and she's wearing a purple top as well tonight, and I don't suppose that's a coincidence, but very nice. So, Jan, you're reading from the end of the book there.
I'm reading right near the very end. And there's another chapter or two after.
It's very seldom that people read from the end of the book, but that is in fact an excellent place to start with our discussion, and because you sort of set the book up already that's going to happen, so you're not really giving anything away. Mm-hmm. But wow, that was 2 very different people trying to converse, wasn't it?
At that point it was, yes. Yeah,
very interesting. Yeah. So before we get into the book, let's talk a little bit about you and how you got here to write a book. You've had one heck of a life. What is it, 35 years as a physician?
Yes, 35 years.
Yeah, and what kind of physician were you?
I was a family practitioner, and for 27 of those years I practiced womb-to-tomb medicine, meaning I took care of everybody in every age group. I delivered 3,000 babies. I had a very active family practice, and I loved it. Yeah.
There's some lovely photographs of you in there as a doctor, and some of them on your site as well, with you being very surprised. One of the most lovely photographs I think I've ever seen, and I'm addressing this to Jan's husband, who's over in the corner, and Steve, is you delivering a baby on your website. It's one of the most, on the Facebook website, the most gorgeous smile on her face, and with a funny little kind of 80s I don't know what you call it, a surgery suit on. Absolutely beautiful photograph, one that ought to be on the cover of Time or something.
Thank you.
Like
well, you know, those photos, that series came, my husband extracted them from a series that Channel 5 did on me delivering babies.
Yeah, that's wonderful. You've had a heck of a life, and of course well known in the town for all sorts of things, as well as some charity work. Tell us a little bit about what you've done with orphans around the world.
Well, in 1995, quite by chance, I started traveling in Russia with Dr. Patch Adams. No relation, although we have a great deal of fun. Not my brother, not my husband, not my ex, no relation. But while I was there, I met a woman named Maria Yelisieva who had a kind of a beginning project with 12 orphans. And Maria's story and what she was doing with the children regarding, she taught me immediately that these children in Russia are throwaway kids who are basically cannon fodder or prostitution fodder for when they grow up, with no education and very little kind of parenting of any kind. So she was working to teach them some self-confidence, some belief that they had value in the world through the medium of art. And I saw what she was doing with the kids, and I started to support her in little ways at first, but you have to be careful when you say yes to those things, because the little ways of selling calendars or little pieces of art turned eventually into a full-fledged big charity called Maria's Children International, which eventually we sponsored 4 projects, 3 of them in Russia, eventually affected the lives of thousands of children, and continue to do so. Those 3 projects in Russia are all independent now and continue really expanding. They're all expanding. The 4th project in Mexico was in the works, but because of health, I had to retire from that about a year ago, almost exactly a year ago. And the charity is closing right now as we speak. It's kind of a heart pain, but I know that the children in Russia will continue to be served.
Oh, that's good. And it's in Russia where you met your lovely new husband, Dima, who's sitting in here, but we're not going to let him talk.
I did, although we've been married 11 years in June.
Yeah, he's not so new anymore.
No.
He's chuckling over there, showing signs of wear. Okay, well, on to the book then. And, of course, even though you've done all these wonderful things, given the culture that we live in, you're still going to be known as Mrs. Karl Koselke in some quarters of this state and this area. And you knew that going into this book.
I knew it going into the book, yes. Yeah. I didn't know it going into the marriage, but I sure did going into the book. I knew that I would always have that tag with many people.
But you don't mind it?
No.
No.
But and it's not intrusive anymore.
No, but it wasn't the best marriage. And
it's a difficult marriage.
Yeah. So the book, how difficult was this book to write emotionally?
Well, actually, it was cathartic, and because it started at Carl's funeral, and I met. First off, I saw all of Carl's associates and people who played with him, and the deterioration that they were suffering from their playing football, and it was really hard to see that.
And you knew them all.
I did, yeah. And it was good to see them. I hadn't seen them for 35 years since we were divorced. But secondly, I learned about a new situation called chronic traumatic encephalopathy. And Mary Hilgenberg, who was Wally Hilgenberg's wife, was telling me that her husband had recently died of ALS, or Lou Gehrig's disease. But she had sent his brain to Boston University, where they were doing a study and finding out that repeated concussions were causing a very predictable set of brain damage in football players and, by extension, hockey players, boxers, and so on, rugby players.
And wasn't there just a football player who killed himself?
Over and over. There's been 3, actually, in the past year.
Just within the last few months is what I'm thinking of. Yeah.
It's actually pretty hot-button news these days.
And it's happened. I was just back home in the UK 2 weeks ago, and rugby league players, I think it's up to 3 now, fairly recently have died from this or committed suicide.
And the thing that helped me, and part of the reason this was so cathartic, I mean, it all just, when I went to that funeral, it all just kind of came back to the fore. I had kind of put a very tight lid on it prior to that, but it was cathartic because when I read the research on chronic traumatic encephalopathy, I saw my husband on every page. And I understood for the first time in 40 years what on earth had happened to our relationship. And I also saw, of course, that it was doomed, that he wasn't ever going to be normal. He wasn't normal before we got divorced, and he certainly wasn't normal after we got divorced because he had, as you know, a motorcycle accident with a big brain injury and paralysis. But that knowledge gave me closure. So writing the book gave me a closure I had not expected. And it was at times very difficult to revisit some of the challenge and even some of the joyful times. It was difficult to remember what we had that was gone by the time we divorced.
There may be a few people around that don't know really anything about him. Do you want to just fill in a little bit about who he was, what he did?
Well, Carl came from Drake University, where he was a starring offensive halfback. He was drafted by the Detroit Lions as a defensive halfback, cut from the team a few weeks later, and picked up by the Minnesota Vikings. After that, he played for the Minnesota Vikings without missing a game for 10 years. During that time, he was an outstanding player. He was all-pro, and he played, again, 10 full seasons, which was well past the average of 3.5 years for most pro football players. He wasn't big. He was 195 pounds, not quite 6 feet tall, but an extremely hard hitter, and also had a really joyful kind of personality, uplifting, and a funny laugh. So he was very popular and liked by everybody.
He was very loved, wasn't he?
Yes, he was very loved.
Very interesting. And I think as soon as you see the face on the cover of the book, Jan's is at the top looking down over the title, and then there's Carl to the right, and then the little family picture to the left. A very, very nice set of photographs on the front of this that kind of show the history of everything here. It's very well done. So,
and also the word football, which has cracks in it. And,
yes, it's very symbolic. Very symbolic. So you start the book back in this almost idyllic Ira environment and meet him, and tell us a little bit about how it all got started.
Well, I was 17 years old, and I went to Drake, and of course I knew everything. And there wasn't anything left for me to learn in the world because I'd had a few knocks in my life and my family had, so I knew everything. And I met Carl in October when I was playing powder puff football, and Carl was coaching the other team of women, and he took a liking to me, and I was the center and also the run back specialist. I'd never played football in my life before that. But I did manage to catch the ball, and then I fell down with it and got kicked in the head and the kidney and ended up in the hospital with a concussion. This is a real irony that I'm the one who had the concussion when we met, because then it was Carl who went on to be so damaged from concussions. But by November, I'm still 17 and we're engaged. And so we had a 1-month courtship, and we were married the following summer when I was 18. And again, I went to Detroit for a few weeks, but we moved to Minneapolis, where I've lived ever since, which is a very long time.
This is Ian Leask here, and I'm speaking to Dr. Jan Adams about her new book, Football Wife, Coming of Age with the NFL as Mrs. Carl Kaselke. Now, once that had all happened, you moved to Minneapolis, and then you start going to school while he's playing, and while he's going off to the camps, and you're going to school to finish your degree, and then on to medical school. Tell us a little bit about that part of your life. It's very, very interesting.
Well, yeah, because of that, we had quite an unusual marriage, the football player and the intellect. And Jim Klobuchar actually wrote an article about me when I was still 18. And I remember we met over in Kaufman Union, and he interviewed me for an article. And after that, Carl and I were definitely a celebrity couple. And many, many articles, of course, about Carl all the time, but about both of us quite a bit of the time. But throughout that time, I continued to pursue my studies. I was pretty adamant that I wanted to have a career. I had switched from medical school plans to medical technology because women just weren't doctors at that time. So I was in the School of Medical Technology at the University of Minnesota. It took me an extra year to get my Bachelor's of Science degree because I had one child, and at the time I graduated, I was just a couple months from having another child. So It took me a little bit longer, but throughout that time I also worked. I worked in laboratories doing research at the University of Minnesota. So Carl and I had a huge and rich life together, but I also learned years later when I read a book that was written about him that I almost knew nothing about his life outside of the bounds of our home.
Interesting.
And I don't know what he ever thought about, what he knew about our life, but I had a very busy life too.
Yeah, I wonder if he could read this book now. I wonder what he'd think.
I wonder.
Yeah, very interesting. You had some firsts as a student and as a physician. You were the first, what?
Well, I was the first woman that they admitted to the University of Minnesota with children, which was a very big step for them. They said at the time, who's going to take care of your children and who's going to cook for Carl and and they knew specifically who he was and who's going to clean your house. And I responded by saying I really was not a strident women's libber. I just felt like I could achieve what I needed to do without making anybody else feel bad about it. So, but I did say to this committee who was interviewing me, well, did you ever interview a male medical student who had children? Did you ask them these questions? And I think that made them realize that.
And they were quite reasonable and ready to make a change, weren't they?
Yes, they were.
And what year was that?
That was 1967 when I was interviewing.
And you got in.
I started in 68. I got in.
You got in and had a stellar career as a student.
I did. I won money towards graduation, both in research and for scholarship, and was on faculty committees. I really enjoyed medical
You enjoyed
school.
yourself, didn't you?
Yeah.
What's also strange, I mean, I think it's, some people just have a number of things going on for them. In your case, I think almost an embarrassment of riches, and you're also a very good musician.
I was, yes, and I continued to play. Actually, I just stopped playing organ for the church just last year in May also, after probably 30, almost 40 years. Well, actually, since I was 14, I was a church organist, played the piano, played cello in many orchestras around here, and the Des Moines Symphony. And, yeah.
And a lovely photograph, again, I don't want to keep drawing attention to the photographs, but they are very nice in here, of you playing the cello with your hair up and looking very 60s. I looked at that and thought, wow, I remember that. I remember that dress. Everybody wore that. It was quite good. But we've got about a minute left to talk about this. Is there anything else we haven't covered that you'd like our listeners to know about with this book?
No, I do want to say that the book is written really out of love, and there's not a great deal of anger or animosity in the book, as you might think there could be in a divorce situation. I really am grateful for that marriage. I'm grateful for my two beautiful sons from that marriage. I'm grateful from the many lessons I learned, and I really had to learn a lot about alcoholism, codependency, drug use, and now chronic traumatic encephalopathy. So
but the book also doesn't
gratitude.
pull any punches, does it? I mean,
No.
you also go straight for the throat with everything. You just tell the truth.
I do.
About things.
Some of it was very difficult to tell.
It's really good stuff. And tell us a little bit about the launch that you've got coming up on Saturday.
Oh, Saturday at the Sopranos Restaurant in St. Louis Park at the new West End Shops, intersection of 394 and 100 from 2 to 4. There's a book signing reception, kind of book rollout party for everybody. Anyone who wants to come is certainly welcome. You can find more information on Facebook about it, or
And do you have a website where they can?
I don't have one yet.
You don't have one yet? You better talk to Mark. That
I
was
have
just
to quickly get it done.
But yeah, I think that's a nice little area up there. Parking's quite good. A lot of underground parking there.
There's a lot of parking right around the corner. Yeah, and they have valet parking too.
And that's just to put us in mind of that. That's a fairly new complex, just
brand new. In fact, half the buildings are empty.
Yeah. It's the road that just kind of gets off Highway 12, old Highway 12, 394. At where? 100. 100. It comes down, I think, to that Cooper.
Yeah, you have to go. Let's see, if you're getting off, you have to go to the south of 394.
Good. Well, that's where she'll be. Jan Adams, football wife, coming of age with the NFL as Mrs. Carl Kaselke. Congratulations on this book, Jan, and Hope you'll come back with another book real soon.
Thank you. I hope to, and I hope to see you all